Hello and welcome to the AVForums podcast for Wednesday the 4th of February 2015, and joining me on this edition are Assistant Editor Steve Withers.
If you have to kill someone, never tell a living soul.
Games Editor Mark Botwright.
I can taste it in my spit.
And Audio Reviewer Ed Selly.
Drugs changed everything.
I don't know why we do these intros now. I mean, we've been going, this is episode, 72 or 73? I think people know who we are now. Steve, you were out looking for some pussy last week. Nah, that joke's getting a bit...
Yeah, I think you need to stop saying that, Phil, because my cat search has come to a successful end, and downstairs right now is Gizmo, who is busy exploring a new environment. Still sounds bad, doesn't it? This is no way out of this. And for the record, Ed, it's a home cinema, not a sex dungeon, and no one tied up in it.
Yeah, you keep peddling that tired old line.
Granted, it does look a bit suspicious when it's all blacked out and velvet everywhere, but
indeed,
I assure
it's
you.
a sex dungeon. In the same way that if anyone says to me, "Oh, we've got a hot tub," no, you have a sex pond. It's all about terminology with these things.
Okay, moving on swiftly. Mr. Botwright, your turn this week. Tell us all about the competitions we can win.
Okay, well, we've still got the Sound Magic E10S earphones, which Ed was suitably impressed by. That competition ends on 5th of February, so...
Tomorrow, from the perspective of this podcast.
Yeah, Thursday for those.
Get on with it.
Attention.
Yeah. The Yamaha SRT 1000 soundstage, and that one ends on the 16th of February. We've also got the Devolo D-Land 650 Plus Powerline kit. There's a review of the 1200 on the site now, isn't there?
Yeah.
Yeah, that one ends on 20th of February, and we've also got the Blu-ray of Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, and that one will end on the 28th of February. So that's the film, not the miniseries.
All right, so that's the recent film, not the old
Which is very good, I have to say. I thought it was excellent.
Hold on, someone at the door.
Oh, we're going so slick as well.
AVForums setting the standard.
Right, so while we wait on Mark, anybody see the Super Bowl last night?
Who gives a monkeys about that?
I understand that the Pawtucket Patriots, or whatever they're called, did all right.
Nantucket.
And I understand it. All balls were inflated to the correct regulation pressure and everything. So that's
Yes,
I'm sure it's, as I say, it's one of those things where, I'm not going to get on my high horse. I mean, there are sports I watch that other people, I watch Le Mans 24 hours for Christ's sake. I mean, that goes on for even longer than the Super Bowl does. And at no stage does Katy Perry sing in the middle of it either. So I'm not going to get on my, but I got to admit, I like rugby, and American football just strikes me as what happens if you did rugby designed by a committee.
Yeah, designed by a committee, and in order to keep the television companies happy.
But however many millions of people thoroughly enjoyed it, and good on them. And it was lovely. I only saw actually sort of edited highlights, but joking aside, genuinely serious, great to see Missy Elliott outperforming again, because she's been properly ill last couple of years with an illness called Graves' disease, and she is now sort of back and recovering.
Who is
and that's
Missy Elliott?
Oh, for God's sake! I know. Obviously, you live in the 13th century, but during the earlier part of this century, Steve, back when you were actually a bit younger, she was a very significant rap and R&B artist, and she did some cracking pieces of work. And she's back, and it's good. I'm pleased.
More importantly, did you watch Charlie Brooker's Weekly Wipe?
No, I did eventually. Yes.
Did you watch it, Phil?
Yes, I did.
It was very funny, I thought. Absolutely super. It was just sweet Charlie. I've been saying that since I was 11 in French class. It was really, really good.
Yes, although it is an acquired taste, because I tried to watch it with my parents and they just didn't get it whatsoever.
Well, Laura had never seen it before, and so I made her watch it, and she thought it was really funny. And he is such a clever guy, because if you watch the Black Mirror Christmas special, that was also really, really good. So a bit of a Renaissance man, old Charlie.
If we're talking American sports, it's got to be NASCAR. Frankly.
What is it about things just going round in a circle that you like, Ed? I mean, I bet you're fascinated by roundabouts and stuff with us.
Well, I live in Milton Keynes, for God's sake.
Yeah, concrete cows.
Well, no, they're not concrete, they're plastic. In that shopping centre, that Mediterranean-style shopping centre where the -5 wind races through. And the guy, I've got to say, whoever runs, in fact, it's called Ed's Cafe think, if I remember right, in that Mediterranean bit of the shopping centre, he's got some high hopes because he was putting his tables and chairs out and setting them all while there's this -5 wind blowing through the whole place.
Well, you heard there was a
You
Scotsman in town.
you didn't see it at its best, I'll be honest. But yeah.
Right.
But no, both sets of concrete cows are indeed, as Phil surmises, they are a chicken wire monocoque or whatever covered in fiberglass. But at no stage have they ever been made out of concrete.
Yeah.
True fact.
Yeah, I read the little thing on the side. Right, that's how bored I was. Hopefully Mark should be back from the door, unless it was the Mormons that have turned up.
No, I'm back, and I came in to see that you've gone off topic already.
We're just killing time to about that.
Yeah, just killing time, and hopefully the listeners are still with us. So let's move on to hardware news, and let's talk about finances, something that Steve should know about, given his previous career, but then given that his previous career maybe wasn't very good at it. Who knows? A good year for LG, Steve. Net profits soar 125%.
Yeah. I mean, given that we've been talking quite a bit last year, particularly of how difficult some of the Japanese manufacturers are finding it, you got to respect the Koreans. They're clearly coining it in at the moment. Both, I mean, I haven't seen Samsung's results yet, but LG's results up 125%. That's net profit as well, so that's after tax. Overall, over the entire company, clearly a lot of that is driven by mobile phone sales, but very good to see that even the home entertainment section is also doing really well, with a 31% year-on-year increase in revenue. So given how many other companies, and we're going to talk about that I think a bit more in a second, other companies that are struggling perhaps in that area, LG clearly are in a very strong position, which is good to see, because I mean, if companies don't make money, they don't make products, and they don't make products, there's nothing for us to buy.
Yeah, interesting, Ed, as well, the results coming out of Cupertino. Apple just seem to rule the world at the minute.
Well, I can't say I'm desperately surprised. I mean, the one that really sort of stewed my head was that Apple is now on its own is 0.5% of the US GDP.
They've got 125 billion in cash. It's insane. Those kind of reserves are just ridiculous.
Don't get me wrong. There have been some interesting articles that they have. Whereas Steve Jobs was sort of determined to destroy Android and was prepared to accept as much damage to his own operating bottom line, the way that Tim Cook appears to have gone about ensuring that Apple has remained competitive it's all about supply chain. It's all about making sure that if you want to do something, say for example, classic example I learned is the fingerprint scanner in the 5S and the 6. Apple not only decided to do that, but then they bought the company that was doing that did the best one, thereby denying anyone else the opportunity to do it anything like as well. It's interesting because the Nexus 6, which is made by Motorola, and my Motorola phone have got this dimple in the back, which it's like a piece of industrial design, but it's the Motorola CEO admitted that it was originally designed to contain a fingerprint scanner, but because Apple now own the best in class at it, no other phone manufacturer is able to get the results they actually want, thereby, if you like, locking that technology into Apple. And going back to Steve pointing out that they are sat on a Mount Everest of money, they can act to buy up vast quantities of stuff, and sometimes they don't even need it. It transpires, and stuff is then sold out without any real concern for having to get your money back on it. But if they feel they're going to need it, they just buy an enormous quantity of it and ensure that they have the luxury and the flexibility to do what they want when they want to do it. And I think that is paying dividends.
If you've got 125 billion in cash, you can pretty much do whatever you want. But if I was a shareholder, and God, I wish I was a shareholder in Apple, I'd be slightly annoyed that they weren't buying back shares and increasing the share value, personally. But I guess they know what they're doing. They obviously know what they're doing. They're the biggest company in the world, as you said. Was it 0.5% of US GDP? I mean, that's bigger. They're bigger than most countries.
And the other thing is obviously, in terms of their competition, from a consumer perspective, there are now actually quite a lot of good Android phones, but it does mean that there is no one single competitor sort of trading blows on a level playing field.
Yeah, it's divide and conquer, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. I'm not 100% sure that that's necessarily a bad thing. I think that the quality of the products coming out across various platforms actually is all pretty good. But nonetheless, I admire what Apple have done. I still need MacBooks to have a bigger keyboard if I'm going to buy one again, but that's by the by. Good luck to them.
Well, you see, I think the reason they are so profitable is probably because they don't have a TV unit. Seems to be.
Yeah, that might well be.
Seems to be if you are in the TV market, you're losing money hand over fist. And Toshiba have decided to pull out of the US market, and by April will have pulled out of all global markets apart from the home Japanese market. We maybe got the company wrong, Steve, but we knew one of them was at least going to go this year.
Yeah, we said that last year. We said we thought definitely at least one manufacturer would go. It wasn't a massive surprise to turn to be Toshiba. When we were at CES a month ago, they had no TVs on display at all.
You should start a technology Deadpool each year.
I mean, so far, Sharp have pulled out of Europe. They're still active in the States and in Japan, but they've pulled out of Europe, so there's no Sharp TVs anymore, no Toshiba TVs anymore for us here. We really are reduced now to the big four, which is Samsung, LG, Sony, and Panasonic. And I'd be willing to take bets on one of those pulling out before too long as well.
Well, there's some rumours floating about the internet. We haven't put a story up because trying to hammer them down and get some actual proof is proving difficult. But there are rumours going about at the minute, and I think we're quite all right to talk about rumours, that Panasonic are looking at closing down their Chinese factory because it's not profitable. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to pull out the TV business. It just means that they're going to close one of their TV factories down. And for Panasonic, it's something that they've been doing all of last year, was mothballing a lot of their TV manufacturing plants. And obviously, they're still going to be operating at a loss because it costs money to mothball stuff. But the interesting rumour going around, and like we say, it is a rumour at the minute, and obviously nobody talking about it other than the rumour mill, is that they could close down their Mexican factory. Now, if they do that, that has implications for the US market.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible that they are just closing down these factories and they have alternative production facilities that they're going to use instead that are cheaper. But from the point of view of the US market, if they're not making them in Mexico, where are they going to be making them? Certainly not going to be the US, or well, I don't know. Maybe they'll move it to the US or something like that. But it doesn't look good from our point of view here in Europe. Obviously, they're all made in Eastern Europe. Where's their factory? Is it Czech?
It's in the Czech
Poland?
Republic.
Yeah, Czech Republic.
Czech Republic. Yeah.
But I think this is going to be a make or break year for Panasonic. They I think by their own admission, perhaps weren't as good as they should have been last year. It was a transition year for them. No plasma, moving into LED, LCD lineup. They used IPS panels. I don't think that went down well with a lot of enthusiasts. They are aware of that fact, and this year they are going to be using, I think, almost exclusively VA panels in the UK at least. And certainly, if they deliver what they're promising, that could be very good. But at the end of the day, TV companies, the TV divisions of large manufacturers need to make money, and I think some of the senior management in some of these companies, and I think particularly in Sony and Panasonic, are losing patience with divisions that don't make money on a year in, year out basis.
They've got to run a company, so all as much as we would like them to continue, it could be that they decide to pull the plug, and if they do, then they have far more profitable areas of the businesses which will keep their name going. They're not that particularly bothered, to be honest. When you're talking about companies the size of Panasonic and Sony, at least. The interesting thing with Panasonic is that they have basically bludgeoned their TV line. There are very few lines now. That could be all they needed to do, was to streamline, just make sure that they're selling the right.
The Aldi effect, isn't it? It's basically what Aldi and Lidl's do. They don't have a lot of choice, but they get the prices right down.
Yep.
And maybe that's the best approach. Rather than having massive lineups of different models, it gets completely confusing. Concentrate on delivering a small range of high quality TVs.
Yep.
And I guess we'll know in 3 weeks' time when we go.
And
to
if you're Sony, you don't change your model number, and then you can sell last year's or the year before's model. People don't know.
It's really confusing for us, though, isn't it? Especially trying to work out what the SEO is going to be for this. It's the same model number. Anyway, I'll be seeing their lineup tomorrow, actually, at the time of recording this podcast. So I should be going to see Sony's new lineup for the UK for this year. So, again, that'll be interesting. And then in 3 weeks' time, we'll see exactly what Panasonic have planned for the UK.
Yeah, because we're going to their convention this year, again in Germany.
Frankfurt, isn't it?
Yeah, Frankfurt. So...
It's only scaling back on the TV front then.
Yes.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's cutting the lines apart from the Koreans at the minute. And even this year, Samsung didn't tell us what the monolines would be. They just told us what the technology was inside them. So
it was one of the things that we didn't discuss, I think, from gaming with regards to CES was Sony announced that PlayStation Now service would be on Samsung smart TVs.
Yeah.
Yes, as well as their own TVs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, isn't it? Interesting that they did a deal. Well, I guess
well,
they
think
do tend to
that
run
was,
these divisions separately, don't they? So PlayStation's not the same as the television division.
But you'd think that would be kind of kept as one of their unique selling points.
You would have thought so.
But then, if you're going to get licensing revenue coming in, if Samsung's selling more TVs than you, that's more license fees that you're getting in. So
Sony's top priority at the moment is 4K in terms of all aspects of 4K, and obviously 4K TVs is their TV division's main priority. And that's certainly the impression we've got at CES. I'm sure that will be the case when I see them tomorrow. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. If you look at the market research, 4K is doing very well. People are buying more and more 4K TVs, and I think the BBC's just done a survey, and they're looking at 25% ownership of 4K TVs within the next few years, which has meant that suddenly, whilst before it was never even on the table, I think they are now considering 4K broadcasting
because of the way that they are funded. They can only do or invest in technologies where there's a certain percentage of the population will have that technology in their homes, and until they reach that point, they cannot spend any license fee money, which is fair enough, on new technology. What this poll does for them is it basically releases the keys to the safe, so they can go get some money and start investing in 4K, which is got to be
which is good. It's good news.
Do you know why I learned that there is a specific reason why this came about? The rules locking in what the BBC can and can't do with license fees, payers' money. When was the first time the BBC shot a television series in HD? What year?
Probably the 90s, late 90s.
Mid 80s.
Really?
Believe it or not.
What was it?
Give us a clue.
Hold on, I'll dig it out for you. Whilst I find the name of it. But the thing is that even when they did it in collaboration with a Japanese broadcaster who lent them a large amount of the equipment, it still cost an unbelievably large amount of money and was to no benefit whatsoever to anybody, as there wasn't even in a professional sense, there wasn't even any way of really looking at what you'd actually produced at the end of it. So that's where the caveat that there has to be reasonable commercial demand for what you're doing before they're allowed to.
It makes sense, but
kick
they
off.
can be a bit more tight with the purse strings when it comes to paying some of their staff and their upper management, really.
Yeah.
They won't look at them and they're wasted.
Yeah, which is why a lot of them have moved over to ITV recently, because I think that cloth is now being cut. Who is typing over the top of it?
That's Ed trying to find the name of this TV show, aren't you?
How have you seen their television history? Here we go. Shot it in 88. It's called The Ginger Tree, which doesn't sound very appealing.
Was it ever even broadcast?
Hold on, let's see.
Never heard of it.
I'll send you the link. So you can enjoy it at your own leisure. And we can stick
to
it on
quote
the
Steve
actual
Hill, we'll put it in
podcast.
the show notes later.
So no, I was quite impressed by that. But that's the reason why they have to behave themselves now, and they can't just go off and do randomly shoot EastEnders in 8K.
Yeah, I think the whole new IT system thing kind of put paid to that as well. Did they spend 100 million and it still doesn't work, and have decided just to can it now?
To really screw up an IT system, you do need a government to be involved, or a government organisation. There's just no parallels to just how much money you can wheel away.
Yeah. So getting back to another technology which BBC did do experiments with, they did do a few broadcasts, but like Sky have now pulled support of it completely, and that's 3D. No surprise really, because certainly in the home, I know that you still get 3D films coming through the cinema, but certainly in the home it looks like it's just a feature now that appears on TVs and projectors. I mean, I've just had a projector through which a DLP projector, which you think the main selling point is the 3D picture, and there's no glasses
to
test the 3D. So moving on to UHD Blu-ray, ultra high definition Blu-ray is what it's going to be called. Seemingly 4K confuses people.
Well, it was only really Sony that were really hammering the 4K end, weren't they? But I guess it understands. Pick one name and stick with it, gents.
Yeah, okay, so, all right, so it's not quite 4,000, but come on, 4K, 4x HD. You would think that if you're going to sell it to the public understand that.
I guess they're trying to keep it, I guess it's just trying to keep it separate from
what's
the
happened
cinema
is,
aspects.
yeah, well, what's happened, there's that side of it, and then the other side of it is, well, we're going to have HDR on it, and we're going to have multi-channel sound on it and all the rest, so we can't just call it 4K. You've got to keep everybody happy.
Yeah, I guess. Well, I don't mind what they call it as long as they release the bloody thing. And this is.
But you're going to be sad because you are a big proponent of 3D. Are you not?
True. Yeah. Okay. Well, the reason that Phil's saying this is because in a leaked presentation that was on, I'll give credit here, it's 4k.com of the site that leaked it. Well, they don't know they leaked it, but they got hold of it. Someone who's apparently got the specifications, the final specifications for UHD. And one of the things that's obvious is that ultra high def, so 4K discs will not support 3D. You still can watch.
No, that's 3D. That's
Blu-ray.
3D and 4K.
Yes, exactly.
Let's make that
3D in 4K, no, but you can still watch ordinary Blu-rays, full HD Blu-rays with 3D.
Now, Steve, this doesn't make any sense whatsoever because you would have thought for passive 3D, the ultimate thing that you want is a 4K panel because then you get 1080 per eye.
Well, you can still do that, can't you?
Well, it'd be scaled rather than native.
Scaled though, rather than native.
Yeah. I mean, I'm guessing they're looking at the numbers in terms of 3D Blu-ray. I mean, if you look at States, the number of 3D Blu-rays being released is falling every week. I mean, Disney, for example, don't release their stuff in 3D on them, even though the movies are made in 3D, like Big Hero 6, for example, which is out of the cinema right now. That's been released in the States pretty soon, I think, in the next couple of weeks, and that's not available in 3D. So they've obviously thought it's just not a big enough market anymore. And I guess, as you said, it's not been a massive success in the home. And so why bother when you're already trying to get more important things into that specification? Like, for example, I mean, just reading through it now, if you want, obviously it uses HEVC codec. It's 3840 by 2160. It's got 10-bit video depth, BT 2020, up to BT 2020, I should say. Color sampling is 420. And video peak bitrate 100 megabits a second, sorry. HDR support, and then frame rates up to 60 hertz. It doesn't include 48, I notice, in that frame rate.
Good. Good.
Yeah. That's what I was just thinking. 24 frames a second, 25, 50, 60. So, right.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that sticks out there is 420, and a lot of people are going to say, well, why are they not doing 422 or 444? Because, for all the extra data that would require, you're not going to see any difference. But that's basically it. It's 420. Live with it, and you wouldn't notice any difference anyway. The big difference is obviously 10-bit bit depth. That's the big difference. That's the big one. That's what's going to stop banding and all the rest of it. Give you better gradations and make things look really nice and wide. So. And
I think I'm also quite keen. I mean, having seen some of these demos already at CES, the wider color gamut and the high dynamic range also will really improve the impact of the image. I think it's not just going to be high resolution. Things are going to look really impressive as long as the demos are done well in stores. It can look really, really impressive.
Well, I mean, the best demos we saw were in the Samsung room. They were calibrated. Properly calibrated to DCI P3. They were showing HDR, wide colour gamut. It was Exodus, Gods and Kings, or whatever it's called.
Awesome.
Picture quality wise, looked absolutely stunning, and that was on
a big screen,
88-inch or a 77-inch. You can never tell in these big rooms because 78-inch screens look tiny in big rooms, but it was a big screen. It was dead impressive. Gets my vote.
So, all they need to do is actually announce all this stuff and get on with making some players and hopefully get some studio support.
Okay, so let's move things on nice and swiftly before we go to upcoming reviews. We have a competition at the minute for the Yamaha SRT 1000, and you've just reviewed it, and hopefully it's lived up to the hype, Steve.
Yeah, it has. No, I mean, I think, Yamaha have been pioneering soundbars for a long time. They're probably, I think, the first soundbar I ever saw was a Yamaha. You know, there's a company that's been doing soundbars for a long time. Soundbar market is now very saturated, and there's been sort of a move into alternative versions. So you've had things like stereo speakers, good old-fashioned stereo speakers, but also what's been called a sound bass or speaker bass or sound plinth. There's lots of different names for it, but basically, it's a big speaker that goes under the TV, so the TV sits on top of it. And the SRT 1000 is Yamaha's first sound bass. Yeah, very impressive. You know, when you've got the experience that they've got, you know what to deliver in terms of both design and features and performance, and the SRT 1000 hits them all perfectly. It's a beautifully designed piece of kit. It looks gorgeous, well made, good solid build quality. You know, it can take your TVs up to 55-inch screen sizes. It's got a black brushed metal finish with a metal grille at the front. It uses their sound projection technology. So basically, there's 8 drivers in the front, 2 woofers at the either end, and then in the bass, there's 2 subs and there's 2 ports at the rear. And basically, it bounces sounds off of the walls around you. So you get a nice open front sound stage, and also you get a bit of reflections around the sides and rears to give you that more of an immersive quality, which really works. I mean, obviously, it's dependent on the room to a degree. You need kind of reflective walls either side to make it really work. But assuming you've got a normal rectangular or box shape lounge, then it'll work in that. The sound quality was really good. Very impressive sound quality. It worked really well with movies and with TV, but also sounded really good with music. It's got 2 optical digital inputs and 1 coaxial digital input. It's also got analog inputs, and it's got Bluetooth aptX. One thing that Yamaha are really good at is making it easy to connect to their devices. There's no this sort of having to press a pairing button or hold a button down for 10 seconds to get it to start pairing. Just select Bluetooth and it immediately paired with my phone. Brilliant. The only thing that's missing, as I'm going to criticize or anything, is there's no HDMI inputs or outputs. But they seem to be unusual or quite rare on sound bases for some reason. So that's my one complaint. Otherwise, though, stellar performer. You can pick it up for 350 quid, or if you're lucky, you can win it in the competition. But I gave it highly recommended. It's a great.
So, lack HDMI, why is that annoying, Steve?
Well, you know, if you think about it, you can. First of all, by not having HDMI, you don't get on-screen displays. You can't use the ARC aspect of the television if the TV's got it, of course. And just generally, you know, I think people like, although I'm not a massive fan of HDMI because it can be quite flaky, and maybe you could say that's a good reason not to have it. But generally, I think people like to see HDMI inputs and outputs on their devices these days. And there is, for example, a Samsung sound bass that we reviewed last year that had both HDMI input and output. But it does have a really good remote app that you can use to control it and also do all the setup for it. So things like you can put dimensions of the room in and the position of the sound bass in with respect to the walls in order to improve the effect of the the sound projection and immersive quality. So it's not that you're going to totally miss HDMI, but I think in this day and age, a lot of people expect it to be on devices. But certainly in terms of ease of setup, control, performance and design and build, top drawer.
Okay, let's move on to upcoming reviews. And Edward, you have been living in the 80s.
Well, yes, it's been very exciting because I have been playing about with one of the most iconic brand names in the business. I have been spending a bit of time with a Sony Walkman. Thankfully, at no stage have I had to rewind a cassette by using a pencil or do anything like that. This is an entirely solid state hard drive based digital Walkman, the snappily titled NWZ ZX1. And I don't want to give too much away, really. I have reviewed it and I've tried to establish whether there's still a requirement for a dedicated audio player. And yeah, I think it's an interesting piece of equipment, and I think having spent a bit more time with it, it makes more sense than I thought it might. Let's leave it at that. We managed to get a bit of a buy one get one free for Sony reviews because Sony, bless them, sent along a pair of their flagship headphones, the MDR Z7s, to accompany it, just in case they were worried that I didn't have any headphones in the house, you know. And
they don't know you, do they?
Well, they don't know. And there's a really large amount of interesting and totally bespoke technology went into them, and I haven't played about with it. Yes, not least because a review that was supposed to happen this month, the company in question is having a bit of trouble getting all the bits together. So these heroically stepped into the breach. So there's two back-to-back Sony reviews, and they relate in part to each other. But what I think is really, it's sort of as a separate note to that, and just lurching back to what we were talking about with television companies and dropping out of markets and the like. These are the first Sony products I spent some time with in a while, and then I've also tested another pair of Sony headphones elsewhere. And I have to say, after years where I really felt they were just phoning it in with their audio products, these genuinely have a bit of, innovation, bit of flair, a bit of the old Sony mojo is back with them. Now, as I say, one of the products I've issued a recommended badge to. One of them I haven't. I'll leave it to you to you can read them and read my decisions and violently disagree with them. But both of them, whether they get a recommended badge or not, at least there's evidence that Sony's they're doing things because they believe that's the way that it should be done, and there's genuine desire to innovate and do clever things. And I haven't seen that in a while, and I'm really, really pleased to see it again.
Just a quick question, Ed. The output from the Walkman to get the high-res audio, is it restricted in any way? It's
very hard to because you can't really sort of hack them open and see what they're doing. Manufacturers tend to get upset if you go inside them. But I will say, and I go and mention this at length in the review, there's no phone I've spent any time with or tested or listened to headphones on that can get anywhere near the output of that Walkman. It has, I mean, high res. I mean, don't get me wrong. In terms of band frequency response, as I understand it, most Android 4 and above phones, and certainly all iPhones from the 5, even though playing high res on Apple products is a legendary ball ache, there's no reason why the frequency response isn't up to the job. But the headphone amp, someone has put a lot of effort into the headphone amp of that ZX1 Walkman. And the very fact that you can drive a pair of £550 headphones off it without any real signs of strain is a suggestion that it's pretty damn good.
Okay, I think I can guess which one won the badge now.
I'd love to subvert your expectations, but yeah, you're probably right.
Anything else?
Yes, just in case you don't want to spend £550 on a pair of headphones, and I ask, obviously, what's wrong with you? We've got the Sound Magic earphones for testing. Sound Magic have been busy making other things, so we've got the Sound Magic P30 on-ear headphones, which are yours for £70, which I have given the full review treatment for. And then, in a rare rush of blood to the head, I've actually gone and reviewed an AV product, another Yamaha product, but that's in part an accident of geography. Rather than going all expensive again, this time it's the RXV677. Yours for, list is 550. Such is the nature of these things. I think you can find it for a bit less if you shop around. So this is a bit more real world, in a world outside of Atmos.
All right, so it doesn't do interdimensional sound then, as I saw it described the other day.
Interdimensional sound.
Frankly, I think that would probably be a good strapline for it. But no, I've given that a good once over, so to speak. And yes, I hope that you find the findings on that to be interesting as well.
Okay, and I've got an audio product to review.
Steady.
Quite an interesting one that I've taken quite a bit of interest in and thought, well, I want to hear this for myself, so I'm going to review it. And that's the XTZ Cinema Series speakers. Lots of discussion on the forums that I haven't kept up with at all, so I don't know what the latest discussion is, but seems to be popular there. Design seems to be interesting, so going to have a look at them. They should be turning up this week.
Excellent. I look forward to it.
And Steve, you're moving across to do a bit more on the movie side of things. Obviously, Oscars coming up, big time for movies, and some big discs hopefully coming up in the next few months as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you think about it, there tends to be a lot of films get bundled around towards the end of the year because of the Christmas market, also because of the way the Academy works. If you're not in a cinema in LA and New York before the end of the year, you don't meet the criteria for nomination. So you tend to get a lot of films bunched up towards the end of the year, and obviously by that sort of 3-month cycle that usually goes between cinema release and hitting the home cinema market, that means that films that came out in November and December will be hitting the stores in terms of Blu-ray in February and March. So this month and next month we've got a lot of big stuff coming out. You're going to see certainly in February you're going to be seeing The Maze Runner, I'm not so bothered about that personally, but you've got Game of Thrones Season 4. They always look fantastic on Blu-ray, definitely worth checking out. Fury, the Brad Pitt tank movie, that's coming out.
Tank movie.
Movie.
That's
it, isn't it? That's all you need to know. Next month, there's Mockingjay Part 1 coming out, and Interstellar, and The Hobbit. So got a lot of big titles coming out, and obviously a lot of big titles coming out at the cinema too. As we start getting through this, January tends to be a bit quiet for the reasons everything's been pushed out in December. But in March we've got first of all we've got in February there's going to be Jupiter Ascending, which is the new movie from the Wachowski siblings. That's definitely something we're looking forward to. There's a new film, Black Hat, the new film from Michael Mann, coming out this month. And there's an interesting film I'm looking forward to called Predestination with Ethan Hawke about time travel that I think looks pretty good. And they're moving into, not so much March, but definitely when we get into April, big, huge month as far as I'm concerned, because we've got Fast and Furious 7, which I saw the Super Bowl spot for, where they drive a car between two skyscrapers, which looks great. And Avengers Age of Ultron.
Can't you just do that on any street in Manhattan?
You can do that anyway. Can you?
Or am I missing a subtlety between?
Driving out the window.
Oh, right, okay.
Oh, fine, okay.
Driving
showing
out
off
the
then.
Yeah, and just ignoring gravity, really, but fine with me. So there's some big stuff coming out. Yeah, it's going to be exciting. The next 3 months are always going to be really good for disc releases and movies before we hit the sort of big summer period. But I think everyone, obviously, Avengers Age of Ultron, which is on 24th of April, is going to be the big release, one of the big releases of the year.
You keep your big releases to yourself.
I've now had the first big disappointment of 2015, and I guess I should have saw it coming, but I watched the Super Bowl trailer for Jurassic World, and looks shit.
I watched it and thought it looked all right, actually.
I wasn't too...
Well, you see, the thing is, genetics, making dinosaurs, that kind of thing, I can suspend disbelief. But when he's using them as raptors as sheepdogs, basically.
Well, that's it though, Phil, right? If the raptors are the good guys, what the hell have they created in the laboratory? What's this mutant dinosaur going to be like? I mean, that'd be fun. And I like Chris Pratt. I think he's quite a good leading man, quite charming, so...
You make it sound like one man and his dog.
Well, it is. It's one man and his dinosaur.
It's one man and his 4 raptors. If you look at the trailer.
I don't know. I don't have, sky high expectations. Therefore, if I go and see it and it's not complete bobbins, would be relatively satisfied.
One thing I will say is that looking at that trailer compared to the pre-release trailer that we saw tail end of last year, CGI looks far better. They've obviously had time to work on it.
Yeah.
It does look...
The giant thing in the water looks better.
Yeah, totally. But I don't know, it just... Because he's using the raptors as basically sheepdogs, that just kind of... Oh, Jesus. It
doesn't bode well that everyone kind of prefaces sentences with, well, I set my expectations low.
I'll tell you what, Mark, we can play the Deadpool game on, because, there's quite a lot of big films coming out this summer. At least one of them's going to tank. So should be trying to guess which film's going to bomb.
Jurassic World has a lot working against it. But it doesn't have the same supporting infrastructure as some of the other films coming back after a lengthy hiatus, Star Wars, etc.
Terminator, I think, could struggle.
I think
in a crowded marketplace.
I think Terminator.
Yeah, but there's a conspiracy theory that's deliberately being set up to be a complete pus-filled mess because Cameron wants the franchise back. So he's just
he's
basically
not making it though. So how?
No, but he does have some sort of role in it, and he appears to have just been there making a series of spectacularly poor decisions.
Also, Fantastic Four reboot so soon after the last attempt just seems like desperation on the part of Fox trying to squeeze every last dollar out of their Marvel franchise.
Is that not just to renew rights as well?
Well, that's it. And also, I think this version is going to be in the same universe as the X-Men movies. Because obviously they're all looking at the shed loads of money that Marvel's been making out of their cinematic universe because Marvel have done it properly. They've taken their time. They've built up to the first Avengers movie. They've hired good writers, good directors, really good actors. and they've produced some really good films. And the second batch of movies, Phase 2, as it's called, I think they've delivered in spades. With I think Captain America was a genuinely good movie. I thought Guardians of the Galaxy was really entertaining and fun, and even Thor: Dark World was good. So, yes, they make tons of money for Disney at the moment, but I think that's because their approach has been so spot on. You can't just replicate that by having films. I mean, look at DC, who are now getting utterly desperate in their attempts to try and emulate that success with their Superman and Batman franchises by having them lumped together almost immediately. I think that could be in 2016. That could be interesting to see what happens with that movie.
I hope all the comic book movies fail.
I think you might be overstating quite how badly it can tank, but I suppose anything can happen.
Well, 50% of the market disappears. That's a start.
There is a bit. Remember the old days in the 70s when like Superman the movie was a big deal because no one ever made comic book films with any kind of decent budget. They were always just crappy TV shows and that sort of stuff. And now it's every other film's a superhero movie.
It's a fact. The fact is, it's gone too far. I mean, the Superman movie, where the destruction in the last third of the film, and you're thinking, how many people were killed? Billions of dollars worth of damage and all the rest of it.
Although apparently that is going to impact the storyline of Superman versus Batman. That the destruction that he wrought upon.
Well, he's got post-traumatic shock.
No, I just think the government's a bit annoyed with him, and they might get a big bill. I hope he's got good insurance. I'll tell you.
Have you been injured at work?
I'm afraid, Steve, The Incredibles have already done that.
Oh yeah, they have, haven't they?
Yeah. There is no original idea left in filmmaking. You may as well just cut it all off now. Just devote everything.
The only thing left now is satire, and they've already done that too with Kick-Ass. So,
and that wraps up our release.
We went a bit off tangent there, didn't we?
Games news next, and we'll try and just keep it in. All right, Mark.
Am I allowed to ask a quick question of Ed before we go on?
Well, go on then.
Very quickly, what's the build quality like on the Sony Walkman?
Phenomenal.
Oh, good.
It's a jewel-like thing.
I just wanted to know, simply because I'm kind of in the market for one, and my old one has I dropped my old Sony Walkman in a cup of tea, and it's still going. So
no, you see, the problem is that this has got a whacking great aperture in the bottom for the USB socket, and I don't know how it would survive that sort of thing.
So's the one that I dropped in my cup of tea.
It is beautifully made. I'm afraid Sony probably going to get upset if I subject it to the T test. The only thing I would say, Mark, is I'm trying to line up. There's an old brand that's been reimagined, it's restarted again, called Acoustic Research, and they've got a personal audio player, and it looks really good, really clever. So I'm going to see if that's some cop as well.
Of course, Mark, you could read the bloody review.
It hasn't gone up yet, in all fairness.
Yeah, but he's an editor. He can get into the CRS and look at it.
You've got an answer for everything, haven't you?
Right, can we go on now?
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to games news. Sony consoles to get Spotify. By that headline, Mark, I am assuming that they don't have Spotify at the minute.
Yes, you'd be correct. Well done.
Thank you.
Sony's had a Music Unlimited service. They had their own service. A lot of people felt that it was kind of unnecessarily pushed towards the front of the feature set for the PlayStation 4. And so therefore that was the main way in which you could get custom soundtracks into your games and the like. It doesn't seem as if uptake has been particularly good, hence why it'll be scrapped at the end of March, and then they'll be phasing in PlayStation Music, which will cover the same ground, but they've got this exclusive partnership with Spotify, which by the sounds of it will include both the free version with the ads and the ad-free subscription model, which obviously makes quite a big difference. May sound like a minor thing.
That makes a big difference, because it's just appeared on the Roku 3 maybe just before Christmas, the Spotify app, but you have to have the premium account to use it, which is going to put people off straight away. If you can use the free service and get the ads served to you, then fair enough, but I think expecting people to use an app where they have to pay for the full premium service straight away, not a good move, in my book.
No, exactly. But it's a great way, because obviously Spotify might be slightly worried about competition from other services to come out. But also it gives Sony another feature which seems to be a key selling point, which is if you've got the ability to link your PlayStation account to your Spotify account. So therefore, if you're already a subscriber and you're in the market for a console, it kind of makes that a little bit easier if you consider the price throughout the year that you'd be paying.
Yeah, and what would be the audio quality on that? Is that limited bandwidth or?
Yeah, it's 3. Well, presumably, I believe a stipulation of getting an app onto any platform is that you don't mess about with Spotify's encoding or compression, which would mean as a premium subscriber you'd be looking at a 320k OGG Vorbis file, which by and large I've never had too much of a problem with the way that Spotify sounds, and they've never made outlandish CD quality claims. I'm perfectly happy listening to it, and I imagine as a soundtrack and just adding a bit of experience and a bit of fun to your gaming as well. Yeah, it's perfectly fine.
It's interesting you say that, Ed, because I'm quite happy with Spotify on the main PC running through a couple of Channel X on low volume for background music. However, recently I have used Tidal.
Yeah.
And I did a little bit of back-to-back with Spotify and with Tidal. What a difference.
Oh, yeah. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to underplay what going lossless can do, but I do think people are going, oh, why isn't Spotify going lossless? Spotify has a different approach and a different business model, and I don't think they're going to rush into doing...
It's a different demographic straight away.
Yeah,
totally.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But no, don't get me wrong. Tidal is capable of...
I've got to say, I read your review and stuff, and I'm really quite sceptical about it until I heard it for myself through a decent pair of gens, and it's just coming off a sound card on the PC. I mean, it's a decent sound card, but it's just a sound card, and really impressed with it.
Yeah, it helps that it's other little things. There's actually some stuff in the background. The way that the desktop app works with USB, and you can actually select. I expect PC here. I imagine Macs are the same, but I don't want to second guess. With the PC, obviously, you can select your external USB DAC as the source, and you don't have to select it in Windows. So you can continue to have Windows notification and other guff come through on your computer speakers, and then Tidal's just sent separately to the audio, which is good. Makes a big difference as well.
Sorry, Mark, we kind of got sidetracked there. On you go.
Again.
And that's games news.
Well, before we wrap it up there, you have an upcoming review of the new Nintendo 3DS.
Yes, fingers crossed. That should be coming through soon. It basically, if people aren't aware, Nintendo have this long history of a slightly kind of iterative approach to constantly updating their handhelds with small improvements and the like. And this time they're adding in slightly more powerful processor. There'll be a small C-stick, which is a little kind of secondary analog nub, basically for camera.
Only sounds phallic, I'm afraid.
Well, I use nub rather than most people are saying nubbin, and I think that's worse.
Both aren't good, to be perfectly honest.
Exactly. But it's basically for camera control and the like. Now that you've got obviously three-dimensional games, it's the idea of just a camera that seems to try and automatically finds its place, or that you can't control on the fly. It's a bit clunkier without having that second stick there. But one of the big selling points will hopefully be, from Nintendo's point of view, near-field communication on it, so you can use the little amiibo figures. So it lines up with what they're doing with the Nintendo Wii U as well.
Cool.
And that is games news.
And that is games news.
Okay, let's move on to movies, and you've only got one choice. You've put two in the running order here, Steve, but we are over time, so you have one choice. It's either or.
Well, I just quickly mention them both.
So, what's at the cinema, Steve?
It was a good weekend at cinema for me because I got to see two genuinely good films. Inherent Vice, which is Paul Thomas Anderson's new movie, which is excellent. Don't expect it to be much of a coherent plot, but enjoy the journey, basically. It's laugh out loud funny at times. It's got a great cast. It's beautifully shot and made, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. The other film I saw, which I saw last night, and Kaz's review is already up, went up about a week ago, actually, is Kingsman, The Secret Service, which is a new film from Matthew Vaughn. co-written by Matthew Vaughn and Jane Goldman, who was Mrs. Jonathan Ross, and also based upon a comic book by Mark Millar. So it's the same team basically that did Kick-Ass, and in that sense, it's a very similar approach. Whereas Kick-Ass was basically taking an amped-up approach to a satirical approach to comic book movies. This is very much a similar vein, but this time it's spy movies, and particularly the classic 60s and 70s Bond spy movies, that kind of, you know, the over-the-top plots, the megalomaniac villains, the gadgets, the locations, etc. It's that approach, and their view was very much, and the reason that they developed it, both the comic book and the film, was because they felt the Bond itself had got all serious, basically trying to chase the Jason Bourne kind of approach to spies. And they thought, where's all the fun? And the fun that used to be in the Bond movies has kind of disappeared a bit. And I would have to say that's probably true. This film is very much in the old traditional vein. So you've got all the elements that would make up a classic Bond film. The big difference is that it's full of swearing and really, really violent. I mean, how it got a 15 certificate, I don't know. But I have to say, I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was really funny, good, great fun, entertaining, exciting. Very much like Kick-Ass. I think you were a big fan of Kick-Ass, weren't you, Phil? And for the reasons that it was really fun. Yeah. It was funny, it was fun, it was entertaining, and it nailed its subject perfectly in terms of, in that case, comic book movies, and in this case, spy films. So you've got Colin Firth, who's playing the kind of, James Bondy character, the gentleman spy. You've got a young guy who, who's a bit grown up on the wrong side of the tracks, but has a connection to Colin Firth's character. And he brings him into the Kingsman, which is the secret service that operates beyond any government. And he goes through their training program. And at the same time, there's the main villain, which is Samuel L. Jackson, who's basically kind of an internet billionaire who's got some nefarious plan to take over the world, or change the world, should I say. Absolutely loved it. It was very funny, very enjoyable. An easy, solid 8 out of 10 for that, and also 8 out of 10 for Inherent Vice 2, which I also thoroughly enjoyed. Very different films, of course, but both of them were extremely enjoyable. And so, could I choose between the two? I don't know, really. I mean, if you're a Paul Thomas Anderson fan, you definitely want to check out Inherent Vice.
I will be checking that out. Probably not at the cinema, but I will be checking it out.
You could. It's quite a long movie, so it would be one that you'd enjoy on disc too. It will look beautiful. He shoots films really well. There's lots of long takes in it that really draw you into the action. It's got a nice 70s look about it too. It's set in 1970, in fact, and.
Well, I was discussing this with you earlier on, and I think he's one of these directors who doesn't make it obvious that you're in a certain time frame, but you're in a certain time frame. He doesn't flag post things up with, over the top wallpaper and that kind of thing, so it's the 70s. But just the way that he sets things, the way that the sets are dressed, the way that the actors and stuff are dressed, you're in the 70s without having to be pointed out to you, basically. And his kind of meandering storytelling as well. I'm thinking like Boogie Nights and Magnolia. Some of my top 10 films.
It's got a similar kind of. Both those films don't really have necessarily a coherent plot a lot of the time. They tend to go from A to B, and it's the journey itself that makes them enjoyable. It's the characters that you spend time with that you enjoy, and the quality of the actors involved. And it's the same with Inherent Vice. Joaquin Phoenix is extremely funny as the hero, who basically is a massive stoner called Doc, and I think he actually might be a doctor. It's not made completely clear, but it's just who he is, which is kind of terrifying in itself. And also you've got Bigfoot Bjornsson, who's played by Josh Brolin, who is really funny too, as this kind of like brutal copper, who's not too good on civil rights, but also wants to be a bit part-time actor. Honestly, there's some stuff in it where I was absolutely laughing out loud.
I do like his characters in these films. It's usually John C. Reilly that plays the oddball one. He was the oddball cop in Magnolia, and he was also the right hand man to Dirk Diggler, wasn't he, in Boogie Nights? And
was it Brock Landers? Was that
Brock
him?
Landers? That's him.
I can't remember now. But it's got, again, like a lot of his films, there's lots of really quality actors who pop up, sometimes just for a single scene, but they're all quite memorable. And I did really enjoy it. Even though it's well over 2 hours, it didn't feel like it was over 2 hours. And by the same token, a very different type of film, but the Kingsman was great fun too. So both of those I thoroughly recommend, and it's up to you which one you choose if you're only going to see one film, but they're thoroughly enjoyable movies.
Okay, coming up this Friday, this is a new feature, by the way, listener. Coming up this Friday, Steve, at the cinema, what can people go and see?
I briefly mentioned it earlier, but opening this Friday is Jupiter Ascending, which is the new film from the Wachowski siblings. It was meant to come out last year. It got put back. Not always a good sign. Maybe it's be that Warner Bros. Wanted to move away from a crowded marketplace and put it out in a month when things are more quiet. but does get alarm bells ringing. But it certainly looks very interesting in the trailers. You know, it's basically a sci-fi epic. You don't get sci-fi as much these days, and certainly Guardians of the Galaxy did very well for Marvel last year in a similar field. And it's got Channing Tatum in it and Mila Kunis. I'm quite looking forward to it personally. I think, you know, whether they succeed or not, they're always interesting filmmakers.
And the interesting thing is Kunis is Meg.
Yes, you should think that Meg's voice is really super hot, Mila Kunis. Anyway, she's that's coming out on Friday. I'm looking forward to that. Also coming out this Friday is Selma, which is the Martin Luther King movie that is nominated for Best Film, but was some people would consider snubbed somewhat by the Academy in terms of the acting categories. It's got a British actor, David Oyelowo. He's up there with Chiwetel Ejiofor for the you can't pronounce their bloody names. He's very, I have to say, he does look and sound an awful lot like Martin Luther King, and haven't seen it yet. Looking forward to that, though. I think it's one of those sort of films that, you know, I guess you could say that the point of it's kind of obvious, a bit like 12 Years a Slave. You know, okay, slavery was bad and the civil rights movement was a struggle. I'm just amazed it's taken this long for Hollywood to make a film about Martin Luther King when you had a Malcolm X movie years and years ago from Spike Lee. But that's coming out on Friday as well. And the other film coming out on Friday, and I've already seen this because it's on Netflix if you want to watch it in the States, is The Interview. That opens on Friday. I can tell you it's got way more attention than it deserves, and sometimes freedom of speech is a bad thing because it's bloody awful. I like Seth Rogen actually, and I like James Franco, and it's rubbish. It's not
but
funny.
it just proves though that there's no such thing as bad publicity, though, is it?
Quite,
I mean, Sony could not have paid for that type of PR.
It's obviously one of those, you know, they were stoned and thought this is a funny idea for a film. It wasn't, guys, and it certainly didn't. You couldn't string it out for an hour and a half. It's appalling.
If you look at Team America, which is in the same vein, you know, after the
that was funny.
That's what I mean. That was funny, but I think it was funny because it wasn't proper characters. You know, it was puppets. You know what I mean? So they took it out. That level of reality was taken away from it, so you could see it for the ridiculous thing that it was. I
think it's just that. I mean, as I said, I've been a bit of a fan of Seth Rogen. I think over the years I've enjoyed some of his stuff, but it's just they're getting repetitive now. It's the same shtick over and over again. It's the same jokes basically, and you know, I found it puerile and boring and not funny. And at the end of the day, you know, they were paying the guy $18 million for this. And Sony should ask for their money back.
Okay, and Stefan, the Blu-rays that are released next week.
Stefan.
Well, you're talking about mispronouncing people's names. So.
Thank you. That would be. That sounds quite cool, though, Stefan. I like that. Or Steph, even.
Stefan Withers.
Stefan Withers.
Stefan Withers.
Stefan Withers. I'll tell you what, the Chinese and Japanese could not say my surname when I lived up there. It was a real struggle for them. Anyway, Blu-rays released next week. We got The Maze Runner and Dracula Untold. Maze Runner is basically one of the current trend of young adult novel adaptations, and Dracula Untold looked absolutely appalling in the trailers. I'm really glad to say that Kaz has put his hand up to review both of these, so I haven't got to. Good luck, Kaz. I hope you enjoy them. I thought they looked crap in their trailers. I haven't seen either of them and have no desire to, but they are out next week if that's your cup of tea.
Okay. Right, so we're going to move on to a subject which has been quite popular on the forums. It has been a trending topic. Endings of a film that stayed with you. So I'm going to start this one off, just so Steve can catch his breath, because I imagine he's going to do quite a bit of talking here. Right, so movie endings that stayed with you, and there's one that just pops in my mind straight away because I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't expecting to see the film that I did see, which was The Usual Suspects. I'd actually gone to see something else that weekend, and it was completely sold out. There was like 7 screens showing this other film and this one screen showing Usual Suspects, and we had to go and see Usual Suspects because the other one was sold out. Ending stayed with me. We had to travel 50 miles to get to the cinema. This is when I lived in Scotland, so it was 50 miles to Edinburgh, or 50 miles to Newcastle, or 50 miles to Carlisle. It didn't really matter which direction you went in. Didn't remember the car journey back, just because of the level of debate, the way that we were talking about that film, and it's the first one that popped into my head. So, Mr. Botright.
Well, there are lots that kind of, I think twist endings tend to stick with you more, but I would go for one that I always remember more than I remember the film, which is The Third Man, just because it's the kind of melancholic, unhappy ending and it's such an iconic scene, and it's so well shot. That's the one I kind of always remember. That, and I don't know, if you're talking kind of going out with a bang than perhaps the end of The Wild Bunch.
Ed?
There's two for me. The first, and it's not a twist ending, is the ending to the German film Stalingrad, which is quite, by a comfortable margin, the single bleakest ending of any film I've ever seen. You think, maybe something's got... No. And I don't want to spoil anything other than that. It stays with me because literally no other film has achieved quite the bummed out... that's... It's quite something. And then I suppose there's two... and I need to stress that I think both of these films are pretty terrible, but I'm impressed that they actually decided to go with the way they did. There's the Nicolas Cage film Knowing, and I thought there'll be some method of there'll be some way they'll avoid catastrophe in some way, shape, or form. No, pretty much everyone on planet Earth dies, and then the end of Terminator 3.
I was going to say spoilers, but actually don't bother watching it, people.
No,
don't bother.
And then obviously end of Terminator 3. I have to say that's the single vaguely redeeming feature of an otherwise completely terrible
It's the only
film.
redeeming feature of that film was the fact that they went ahead the way they did.
Yes.
In a similar light, I'd like to add the end of Doctor Strangelove for having the balls to do that too.
I don't know, that strikes me as less of a whoa. Because the way that it was going, you felt that there was always
put it in context of when it was made.
Yeah,
straight after the machine missile crisis.
Yeah, all right, yeah, point taken. So those are mine.
Okay, so Steve,
I'd go for three different types of endings. So there's a sort of twist ending approach. I've always actually a double whammy because it's got a great twist about 3/4 of the way through, and then a really great ending as well, which is Fight Club.
Yeah,
I love that.
Was the other one.
Time my lifeline is brilliant.
Yeah, that was the other one that popped in my head recently.
In terms of feel good ending, Shawshank Redemption. Everyone loves the ending of that. You can't not feel. Funny enough, I watched it at the weekend, and it's just you can't not feel good at the end of that movie. And
I bet you were crying. I bet you were in tears.
Well, not this time round, but when I first saw it. Although I wish they had actually kept the original ending, because the way it originally ended was with his voiceover going, I hope the Pacific is blue as it is in my dreams. I hope. And then the bus going off with the distance. He doesn't act, there is no scene where he meets Tim Robbins' character at the end. But the test audiences are going like, hang on a minute, aren't they going to meet up? So they had to shoot that sequence on the beach and add it in. I still think I preferred the I hope ending because it's more ambiguous. But for me, without doubt, hands down, the most shocking ending ever that stuck with me ever since I saw it is the ending of Don't Look Now. With the red coat. I'm not going to say any more because if you haven't seen the film, I don't want to ruin it for you. But trust me, it is unbelievably shocking. And
but it works both as a shock.
Yeah.
And
totally
also, you go back and watch it again. Throws everything on its head.
Totally left field. You don't see it coming, and it just absolutely. I guarantee anyone who hasn't seen that film, see it. It's a fantastic movie, but that ending is going to knock you for a loop every time. It's unbelievable. That would be my number one. I mean, obviously there are loads of great endings, but that's the one that stayed with me forever for 30 odd years now.
So just to wrap up on this feature, what was the main consensus in the thread then, Steve? What were the type of things that people were picking up?
Well, I was going to say the usual suspects turn up, but I meant actually that in both senses of the word. The usual suspects is one of them. Shawshank, Seven, Taxi Driver. I mean, I think we're all, fair enough. The Descent is a good one.
Yeah.
That's got a very...
You're not expecting what happens to Leo when he comes out the elevator. You're not expecting that.
No. That's the.
That's
The Departed. Good one though. Good one. The Departed again. That's a surprise. The Descent is the one with the girls potholing.
That's it.
Neil Marshall film got a great ending. Actually, speaking of surprise endings, have you seen To Live and Die in L.A.? A bit like the Departed. That's got a shock surprise just before the end, which you don't see coming. Oh, certainly I didn't. Knowing gets a nod, Ed. For bleak endings.
You mean two people have seen that film?
I've seen it as well.
I've seen it.
One Thing of the Cuckoo's Nest, fair enough. Yeah, that's a bit of that ending stays with you, I think. I guess for a bleak ending, I'd go for The Empire Strikes Back. That's pretty bleak, isn't it? Luke lost his hand, Darth Vader's his dad, and Han Solo's frozen, and the Empire's given the rebels a good kicking.
Yeah, but he gets a robot hand.
That's true. Then he finds out his girlfriend's his sister. Which is pretty...
Yeah, but the creepy thing is that Lando dresses his hand.
I like it when Lando turns up in the Lego movie and trying to chat up all the girls. Really funny. Terminator 3 gets a nod as well, Ed, so you were there with that one.
Well, as I say, it's the single bold thing that film did.
I don't even think I saw the ending.
Oh, the Mist gets a nod.
Reasonable bit of the whole thing then.
The Mist has got a divisive ending, I'd say, is the best way to put it. The Prestige, I love the film. I've actually guessed the twist about halfway through, but I think
I think the most disappointing one was Sixth Sense. I got that, but about 5 minutes into the film.
Yeah, when he gets shot, basically. Hang on a minute.
Yeah, totally.
Less said about M. Night Shyamalan and Ding Dong the better, I think. Bloody one-trick pony.
Although Unbreakable, I've got to say, he gets a kick in. Unbreakable is probably his masterpiece, I think.
And I was thinking about that last night because Samuel L. Jackson plays the supervillain in Kingsman, and obviously he's a villain in Unbreakable too. Not quite in the same mold, but yeah, I guess 2001 has quite an unusual ending, doesn't it?
What about for general endings? It was on.
The whole film is a bit bonkers.
In fact, actually, this guy's listed Bruce Leroy. Fair enough. You've listed Don't Look Now. Excellent. I totally agree with that. Carrie, yes. Brazil, yes. And Vertigo, yes. All four films are very memorable endings. Planet of the Apes. How about that for an ending?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense, by the way. Why is everyone speaking English? No, look, there's the moon up there. I must be back on Earth. But
yeah, I think that kind of illustrates how certain endings stick with people just because they're so far out of left field. It's like writing a story when you're a child and saying, and then we all woke up and it was a dream.
I'll go for endings that made me cry, and also for being one of those rare third films that really works. Toy Story 3. That was a pretty good ending. And then before the ending, the bit when they're all
about Toy Story 3 at all.
Oh, you've just become bitter and jaded in your old age, haven't you?
What do you mean become?
I've got to say, Toy Story 3. It wasn't this Christmas, maybe 2 Christmas. It was the first Christmas that it was on BBC on Christmas Day, and we had a full house, and everybody was sat glued watching it. And I'm talking about there wasn't any kids; they were all adults. Everybody sat mesmerised watching it.
I think it's a great film.
I think they're great. I think they're great films. All three of them are absolutely astoundingly good films. The
bit when they're all holding hands, waiting to die, is really quite shocking. And I was thinking, they're not going to kill them all, are they? So that's a good one.
Obviously, you have to have a heart, Ed.
Well, that's me failed then, isn't it? I don't do schmaltz.
That about covers it, Phil. Well, the thing about this is you obviously don't want to say too much because you don't want to give away the endings, the really good endings to films if people haven't seen them. So it is fraught with danger.
Considering I've had 300 calories up to this point today, I think I've done pretty bloody well, thank you. Mondays is always
that's
now
why you're
a day
in such a
of
grumpy
unbridled
mood.
misery.
Right,
I think I'm in a particularly bad mood, all things considered.
You need to change that then, Ed, because we record on a Monday. You need to be changing it around.
You need to be drunk.
Yeah, you need to be drunk and full.
What, in the middle of the day on a Monday? Because there's nothing like collecting my son from nursery, reeling. Yeah, that'll go down a storm. Yeah, fine. All right.
My favourite, though, with regards to twist endings, and I know it's a schlocky film, and I know a lot of people do hate it, but Angel Heart.
Never seen it.
You've never seen it?
No.
It's very good. Good adaptation, actually, from the book. The reason I like it is simply because I like when there's a twist ending, a bit like with The Prestige, where all the clues are actually lined up throughout the film.
Yeah.
And so you can go back and rewatch it again and see that there are hints within the script and that kind of thing, like with Don't Look Now as well. It's the one thing that I kind of slightly begrudge The Usual Suspects with. It's the fact that it's not really a twist in the sense that you were given any clues. It's just saying this character turned out to be the bad guy.
Yeah, although it does start to flash back through, though, where he's been getting all these taglines for his stories. So, like Kobayashi Porcelain and
exactly, but you never
Redwood
see that or anything.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry we're interrupting you, Steve.
What is your ringtone?
That's not the ringtone, that's the cat.
Yeah, I know what you're saying there. And another one that worked for me as well was Memento. because you kind of start at the end and work your way through.
Yes.
Yeah,
back to
that's
front.
a different way of doing it.
Yeah, but again, that was another film where I was at the end of it 2 or 3 days later still thinking about it.
You can watch it through in the traditional order.
Yeah.
Wasn't that an Easter egg on
it was,
DVD or
it
something?
was an
it's
Easter
in
egg
the
on the
DVD.
DVD. Yeah.
And it's terrible.
Yeah.
Fight Club is one of those films that when you watch it the second time really stands up because you do see all the clue. They are all there.
They are. Yeah. Meatloaf's brilliant in that as well. Really good performance from Meatloaf.
He's good in the Celebrity Apprentice USA as well.
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah. And on that bombshell, I think that's about enough for this week. So thank you very much for listening. And all I need to do is thank Steve Withers,
Typical. Even drug dealers don't work weekends.
Mark Botwright,
Ask me one on sport.
and Ed Selly.
Don't piss in my pocket and tell me it's raining.
Don't forget you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook, bookmark AVForums.com for latest news, reviews and video. Plus, why not leave us a rating on iTunes if you enjoyed the show. I'm Phil Hinton, thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you next week.